I finished a new painting. It's called Sunny Hope Dreaming. If you're coming from the Patreon post, let's have a quick look at the silvery effect, which you can see a little bit here, but I've also got video of that. I'll show in a sec. But yeah, so some of those swirls around there are silver paint, metallic. So let's cut in the one in the sun. So yeah, that's what the silvery paint looks like. For those of you who are interested in the Patreon post, that also has like reference images and my whole description of pretty much how I did it. Yeah, if you want to see that, you can look up here, and I'll also put the link in the description. Now, I guess we'll just talk about this, which will probably repeat some of the stuff in the Patreon thing, but I can't be bothered to edit in all the progress pictures and reference image and whatever. So yeah, let's just talk about this. So yeah, the reference image was just Hope sleeping in the sun, but the background kind of sucked. So I've changed the background to be more of this sort of dreamscape kind of thing. You know, with little pastel-y colours and then swirling it and the silver. It's acrylic on wood panel, and I've gotten really into working on the wood panel because, like, canvas is okay, but canvas has this texture and it's also soft. I mean, you can get canvas board, but then you're working on this cardboard and, like, it's okay, but it still has that canvasy texture, whereas wood board is, like, perfectly smooth. I get these ones from Eckersley's, I think. Yeah, it's perfectly smooth. It's really easy to draw on. It's hard, so, you know, if you're trying to draw on it with a pencil and you're trying to draw, like, it's just easier. If you make a mistake, it's really easy to rub out because you're not worried about warping the canvas, you know, the fabric, because it's wood. That's not going to happen. It's not going to warp that way. So I like that. I also just like the general texture of it. It gives you something a little bit different. I think if you look at the scan of it really closely, or I don't know how well it shows on camera, but there are some bits where the wood texture is showing through, and I kind of like it. It's a little bit different. You know, I guess that's me being a bit of an art wanker, but yeah, you can just see some of the wood coming through, and mainly on Hopi though, it's a bit harder to see it in the background because I think I went a bit thicker on the paint in that. I didn't gesso it first, so that's going to be interesting to see how it holds up if we get any issues long term. But you know, you've got to experiment because I haven't been able to see if there's like a proper process. I don't know. Wood panel is like, it was popular a long time ago before canvas was a thing, but it was a different kind of process and yeah, kind of out of fashion, and it's hard to get bigger ones in this style. I think the biggest I've seen in this particular brand at least is a 16 by 20 inch panel. But yeah, no, a little bit old-fashioned, so I've never been in a class where they've said you should gesso it first, and the website said you could just work straight on it, so that's what I did because I'm lazy, and I like, with another thing about working on the wood, so you can see on the back what the colour's like. If you work on just white, sometimes it's a bit hard on your eyes, and that's why they say to put a ground on first. Whereas this is kind of like a nice colour to work on. You can see on the Patreon post, you can see where I've done the background first and then where Hopi goes. And because the background wasn't white, where I'm painting the white, it was just so much easier to see what I was doing. So yeah, I like that. But no, one thing I just thought of in terms of the wood texture showing through, I had one teacher in my Master of Art degree, and I made these bonsai on plastic rocks. I think I've talked about that occasionally. And one of the things she liked is that, so I did root over rock style, and then I had to put moss on it, because with those root over rock styles, you can't just put the roots over the rock and expect the tree is going to be fine. You need to protect them for at least a year, depending on the type of tree and the conditions and whatever. So yeah, the roots were completely covered, but there was there was a little bit on those rocks that weren't covered completely by moss and clay and all that kind of stuff, and so you could see a bit of the plastic rock showing through. And I forget the term that she used for it, but it's like, you know, not integrity. I don't know what the word is, but you're showing some of what's underneath, and she really liked that, like, you know, showing your medium kind of. There's probably a technical term. If I think of it, I'll write it in either just the description or the comments. But she used some kind of description and, like, you know, it's really cool how you've shown part of the medium, and apparently, like, in the past when you were painting, sometimes you would not completely cover the support medium, whether it was canvas or a wood board. You would actually leave a little bit to show what you were painting on, and that's like some artsy thing. And you know, like, I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I look at this, I'm like, oh yeah, you can see that it's on a wood board, and that makes it different from canvas. I mean, also, like, the really sharp edges, you don't get that on the canvas because you're wrapping it around wooden supports. But yeah, no, I just like, oh yeah, maybe she was onto something with that. Anyway, bit of a tangent, and if I think of the words she used, I will write them down somewhere, but I can't think of it off the top of my head because that was not a planned tangent, but hey, me and tangents. So I already talked about the background, and yeah, it's got a bit of a silver, because when I just put those colors, it was good. It felt like it was lacking something, and so I feel like the silvers helped make it more of a dream kind of thing, because, like, yeah, the original background in the reference photo was really boring and kind of a mess. So I was like, well, he's asleep, right? So let's make it about him dreaming, and this is his dreamscape around him. And, you know, it also gave me the opportunity, I'm considering entering this in the local gallery thing that I've been doing every year for, I don't know, maybe two or 3 years, I don't remember. But, yeah, no, I'm thinking of entering in the gallery because they're kind of conservative, and this is a kind of conservative, pretty picture. That's one of the main reasons I did it. But yeah, having Hope dreaming, right? So these gallery guys aren't going to know that my dog is called Hope. So they might think that I'm trying to make some kind of statement like Sunny Hope dreaming. Ooh, what does that mean? When actually it's just about my puppy. You know, it could just be Sunny dog dreaming, but hope is like one of those words, right? Do you know what I mean? So that could be kind of funny. And yeah, having that dreaming sort of thing. I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how they interpret it. You don't usually get feedback, but if we go to the opening night again and dress up funny and end up in conversations with people like we did last time, that could be interesting and amusing. Anyway, so as for painting Hope, like, the outside was easy. I just mix up some pastel colours, chuck them on, whatever. And it's abstract, so it doesn't need to be perfect or anything. But, and really, none of it really needs to be perfect. I gotta stop with the perfectionism, but you know what I mean. Like, it doesn't have to be realistic or conform to any standard. With Hope, though, like, it was really hard to get the colours right. If you go to the Patreon post and look at the original reference image, particularly with this area here, right, how easy is it to see? This is very, like, I just used black and white greys. I didn't really mix any colour into it because I was having trouble just, like, working out what colour it even was. I think in hindsight it was actually kind of a darkish yellowy colour, but I'm not sure exactly how to mix it because one of the problems is I'm currently still using student grade paint. Like, I'm trying to run them out before I upgrade to fancier, more expensive stuff. And like, student grade is fine, but the problem is it's sometimes hard to work with because with acrylic paint it tends to dry darker. So you mix up a colour, like white obviously stays white, but if you mix up a grey, the grey is always darker than you think it's going to be, and it's really frustrating. Like, it goes on and then it darkens, and then you're like, well, great, now it's darker than I meant it to be. So same thing with yellows. Like, I had to use a bit of yellowy, like, light brown colours, orangey colours up here for Hope's patterns that he has around his face, and that was hard enough, never mind this sort of vague colour down here. And you know, even mixing some of this, I'd mix it up and then try and use it. I was like, yeah, this colour will do, and it darkens and you're like, shit. And then you know, you go over it so many times to try and get it right, and changing, adjusting the colour, and then sometimes you're like, well, maybe if I added a little bit of this to the colour, and then you completely ruin that colour because it's the wrong colour now and you've got to adjust it back. It's a painful process. So it's partly that I'm using student grade paints, but also partly that my colour mixing, especially for browns, I find that difficult. It's easier for me to do more defined colours. Like, if I want a dark red, that's not too hard to mix. but if I want different shades of brown, I struggle with that. Yeah, and then the greys with the way the paint works, drying darker, that's so difficult. So that was a problem. But I did finally, I think, get the hang of glazing to some extent, at least in this context, because, you know, I don't know how easy it is to see, but Hope's like fluffy and furry, right? So I painted like the main colors, the white, the main shading and all that, and the main stuff. But to lighten this, because this is really too dark at one point, so to lighten it, what I did is you can mix acrylic paint with a little bit of water. You don't want to overdo it because otherwise the paint kind of falls apart. But you can mix acrylic paint with a little bit of water and go over it. And this isn't gesso, this is just regular white. So when you do that, it gets a little bit transparent, and then you can just go over it little bit by little bit. And I was doing it in first strokes, going over this for the most part like that. And because it's got the water in it and it's not completely opaque, it's a little bit transparent, what happens is it gradually lightens it. So instead of having to mix grey after grey and hoping that this one is going to be light enough, I just went over it with white and gradually lightened it that way until it was acceptable for what I wanted. And the other benefit of doing that is it helped me get more fur-like strokes. And I'm like, I think I finally got the hang of this. A little bit tricky sometimes to judge, because when it first goes on, it looks really white, and you're like, maybe I've ruined the entire thing. But then it dries off, and yeah, you can see what's underneath. And so you just do layer and layer and layer, and then you've got fairy dog. It was, yeah, and even for like doing the fluff on the end of the tail, it really helped with that. So learning something every time I do painting, pretty much. And yeah, so maybe the last difficult thing was just accepting the imperfections, because if you put this up next to the reference image, I mean, of course the background's different, but with the subject matter, there are differences between my painting and the original photo, and it was really hard for me to step back because I'm like, oh, that little thing is off, I should adjust that a little bit. But you know, if you overdo it, you know, you run the risk of making more mistakes. And then also, like, it's just, if I wanted it to be 100% perfect, I would just print out the photo. There's no point painting if you're trying to be 100% perfect, unless you're one of those people who really wants to show off your skill, and I'm not that kind of level, and that's not what I'm really wanting to do. So yeah, you know, you're allowed to have things that are different to your reference image. You know, I have changed things in the past, like when I did this one ages ago. It was Hope playing under my bed. I think that's the one that I got in the art gallery this year. Hope was playing under my bed, and in the original picture for that, there's like the leg of a music stand or a microphone stand or something right next to where he's coming out, and I thought, well, that looks ugly because there's too much black in this one big spot, so I erased that and just was like, this is carpet now. So sometimes, like, you need to make changes like that. With the original reference, like, there was so much fluffy fur coming off this tail, I was like, yeah, let's trim that back a little bit. So that was an intentional change. And then with the other ones, you kind of just be like, well, you know, it doesn't matter that it's different. And that's like trying to get that through my head. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. You're an artist. You can change stuff. You can make changes and improvements. They're not necessarily mistakes. What's that guy? Those things are birds now. What's his name? Was it Bob something? Or I don't know. I'm not good with other artists, but yeah. Stepping back and just being like, hey, it actually looks alright. And especially when I take photos of it and I look at it from a distance and all that, I'm like, actually, that's actually pretty good. I'm kind of surprised that I pulled that off. Like, even the sketch that I did on the wood, I was like, oh, that actually looks quite good. Looked a little bit like Bambi, but I didn't even have to rub out that much. It just happened. And I'm sort of like, who am I? I haven't even practiced that much painting. Why am I so much better at it than I used to be? Is it just that I'm using more reference images than I used to? Or have I gotten smarter? Or has my brain just sort of clicked and figured it out? I don't understand. And like, I'm kind of surprised that I got this good a result too. Like, I don't know what I was expecting, but some of the shading that's in this, I'm just like, how did I do that? I don't know. I am not the same person I used to be, and I don't know who did this. It feels like I didn't make this. Anyway, so that's my painting. Yeah, I've got a 600 DPI scan. If you're one of my patrons, I'll release that in the next day or two for the end of month goodies. Yeah, so you can print it up for personal use. I'll work out what size that works out. Because yeah, if you print it at 300 DPI, which is nice, you can get like a twice as big one, maybe, or I don't know. Yeah, so, that's my painting. Join my Patreon, or I don't know, if you're unhappy with the situation with Patreon, you can use my PayPal instead, but we don't know if PayPal was involved somehow, or if there's like MasterCard and Visa may also have something to do with stuff. I don't know, what a shit show that's all been. But if you would like to support me, Patreon's probably the best, and then PayPal is also good if you prefer not to... Ugh, there's a little bug. It wasn't even a normal fly. What the fuck is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, PayPal, also good. And yeah, so I want to do more painting in the next year. So I've got to think of more things to paint. If you have any ideas, leave them in the comments. Mum's like, maybe you should do Mali next. And I'm like, oh shit, Mali's going to be difficult. But yeah, we'll see. And that's all I have for now. I'm going to try and swat this bug that is annoying me. Maybe I'll feed it to my ants. Oh my god, get off my stuff. See you later, guys. Have a happy... Is it New Year yet? No, that's in a few days. Well, if I don't see you then, have a happy New Year and stuff. Ciao for now. Everywhere.